All right, we're live. This is Stridertalk. I'm your host, Matt C. I'm here with my friend John Matos. How you
Hey,
doing, John?
what's up, everybody?
And it's another fun Monday. Another these things always sneak up on us. I don't know if it's the quarantine or what, but these days kind of run together.
Right? No, yeah, I'm totally with you. Oh man.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we got a pretty decent. This is going to be a fun chat, rather packed together. So we're going to do some things at the front end. We're going to talk about some of the work that we've been doing right now, and then we're going to get into our main subject, and then we're going to have a bit of fun at the end if we have time. So first off, you have a top 50 techno thriller.
Haha, yes. So I had been working on this collection for the last few weeks. There is um, a atomic sci-fi short story at the top end with New Babylon, techno thriller in the middle, Neon Bathsheba, and possession horror story, The Last Surprise at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as I was saying off mic, I just figured out that techno thriller was a thing. Um, there were some progenitors like Ex Machina and Devs that recently aired on FX that are kind of getting in the ethos. But just to find out that like there are readers on Wattpad that are supporting techno thrillers, and that you know it got that superlative. It was like, wow, there's a place where there are readers for my stuff, so it was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I yeah, and I changed the cover. The original cover had a pretty intimidating looking dude with a neon mask on, and I
Sure.
thought this more fit. Like this could actually be the character Odette that's in the Neon Bathsheba short story. So that was fun to kind of give it its own kind of superlatives cover and give it a
Cool.
little bit different vibe, considering the techno thriller readers are out there and supporting it.
What's your pitch for the story? Like, how do you elevator pitch it?
Oh, so I refer to it as Isaac Asimov meets The Handmaid's Tale,
Hmm.
because it's definitely a concerned with the same type of AI type of stuff that's in a lot of techno thrillers, but it also kind of has this idea of like it's like it's using technical engineering as a metaphor for social engineering,
Hmm.
um, and so that's my elevator pitch
Cool.
for that.
Cool. So it's getting a lot of feedback, which is nice. A lot of readership. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, and so I'm actually taking this bit, this thing by the teeth, and deciding that this story that you've been helping me kind of workshop behind the scenes, I've released a fan edition of Kaiju Kids, which is a middle grade epic
Hmm.
fantasy that I'm working on.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and so
You
I
already got a
figured,
cover. Nice.
oh yeah, yeah, that's it's funny because like I usually do that regardless. Like I've been doing this for years, just making fake covers of stuff that I'm just working on.
Oh,
Um,
neat.
so I just happened to find somebody's art on Creative Market that like really spoke to me as like a good middle grade um, cover.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and I threw this together, but I'm basically using this opportunity to see like, okay, if I put this thing up and I get feedback from people, it'll help me to see if there's anything that I need to change. Like I'm hoping to get some comments on it, and it'll help me kind of workshop it. And then once I'm
Yeah.
done, and once I've done some editing, I'll figure out like, do I want to shop this around to um, literary agents? Do I want to self-publish this? Um, so that's kind of I'm gonna put this as an alpha version of Kaiju Kids for now. Um,
Yeah.
but
Cool.
yeah,
Well, that's great. I'm glad you're running with that. Excellent.
um, but I'm excited to hear about what you're working on.
Oh,
Let
well.
everybody know.
Yeah. Okay. So first off, we got a second campaign running right now called Colton Crux. So I'm just kind of handling. I'm the contact in the U.S. for this campaign. This is done by an amazing Ukrainian artist who's been working on this for a while, and it's like a H.P. Lovecraftian kind of noir detective story, and with like weird demonology and exorcisms and
Yeah, see that was what got me to
yeah,
support it. Like the
yeah,
fact that um it's taking this pulp world, which I already just love the aesthetics of, right?
yeah.
And it's using it as like this kind of it's because I keep trying to convince people that noir is just as rich as fantasy, right? Like if you
Mm,
watch Breaking Bad, you watch Better Call Saul, if it has a good enough writer, it creates a world in itself.
yes.
And so to see that in being used this way by this creator, I fell in love right away.
Yeah, I mean, he understands the noir aesthetic as well as the uh, pulpy uh, thriller suspense horror kind of dynamic too.
Mm,
He really
right.
knows black and whites, which is something I struggle with, so I don't do it. But he understands it really well, um, especially for I mean, if I can say for a European guy who a lot of European comics, uh, it's just like hanging out with him, talking to him. He didn't grow up on a lot of comics, so I guess that probably freed him. He doesn't have a particular European style. He doesn't have more of a lean clear sort of thing that most
Mm,
people who grew up on comics in Europe would probably be filled by. I think he's just more like he knows good illustration. He knows what he likes, and he's learned to make comics based on his illustration knowledge, which I think is a really cool approach because it's going to keep things very fresh and interesting. It's got a very distinctive style, which I really appreciate. It's very professional, so it's just yeah.
mm.
So that's exciting. So I'm really proud of what he's working on. So happy to be helping him move that along. And let's do one more. Uh, Switching over to yours. Okay, so got a where so a friend is making a poster. I don't want to show all of it, but he's working on something for me that's going to be a poster that we're going to release before the campaign is over, and it's very impressive. It's I'm very excited for it. So we're just trying to figure out price points, but he basically donated with once I reveal more about it, I'll reveal who drew it and all that sort of thing. And once we get colors on it and stuff like that, but he just likes the campaign and he wanted to help out. He wants to see it fulfill in the next 6 days before the main campaign's over.
Mhm.
So he just kind of donated his time, which is super nice, and very thankful for that. Still going to get him paid on the back end though, but uh, he was fine with that being down the road, which is very considerate.
Yeah, it's very gracious of him, and it's excellent work. Oh, let me remove this real quick. There we go. Yeah, I'm happy that you got somebody else that's, um, lending some kind of, uh, you know, visual support. I guess you
Yeah,
could say.
yeah, I think it's important. I think it's really fun, but it's also important to show when people who have talents are interested in your
Mm,
project that you bring them in as soon as
uh,
possible to participate in it, because I think it goes back to that whole like the sort of marketing approaches that we talk about that really do work because they're valuable, that people can tell that it's the hallmarks of how normal human beings tell when something's valuable. is if other people are coming in and getting on board and
Right, right.
participating, it starts to feel like a movement, and it's or a community of interest, of shared excitement.
Mhm.
And so that's how you build momentum. I think when it's just one creator the whole time,
That actually that gives
I know.
me that gives us a good, I think, segue into uh, the topic today because like you had kind of mentioned in the messages like that there's a little bit of, so us mercenary marketing communications people call
Mm,
this social proof, um, and it's interesting like when you, so I think like you as a creator are dealing with like you're dealing with classical philosophy, um, but it's become so much like more mainstream recently to have like your political affiliation the be your brand, and so like
mm,
you had been saying this, I won't name names, but like about other organizations that make that they tie their branding very very close to the fact that they have a specific political agenda. Um, and
mm.
so I'm interested in how the Weinstein brothers specifically, like Eric Weinstein came up with the term intellectual dark web. He
Yeah.
wants to make it like
Oh, it
being
was
an
him. Oh, wow.
intellectual, yeah,
Cool.
being an intellectual who has been, you know, in some way oppressed is kind of like what he wanted Jordan Peterson um, and his brother Eric and stuff, or his brother Brett, and
Yeah.
stuff to be known for. Like this is there are things in the intellectual world that are being suppressed. So like that's what we are defining ourselves with. But yeah, you have a video queued up that will let people know more specifically um, what happened recently.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was pretty fascinating. So I'm going to press play and I'm going to hope that the audio is coming through because uh, if we had people. Can you hear that?
Oh, no.
Hmm.
I have a little brief written out if you want me to do it that way
Yeah.
while
Maybe do it
we're
that way.
waiting.
Yeah.
So Eric Weinstein created the term intellectual dark web as his way of proving there's a concentrated effort by business minded by the business minded to weed
Hmm.
out creative thinkers. He's been making noise around public conspiracies such as Jeffrey Epstein's death, but recently presented a podcast where he shares something even more far reaching and less well known. According to Weinstein, his brother Brett discovered that most lab mice are being used in the scientific community are not representative of all lab mice. Both brothers are firm believers in Herbert Spencer's theory of first principles, which would assume the natural entropy of biology is more stable than a controlled monoculture. However,
Hmm.
this discovery was first ignored and then bastardized by a Nobel laureate and close colleague of Brett's, who claim the current dissemination of mice is perversely viable because they all eventually die of cancer. So, in theory, you can run more tests which are relevant to cancer. But if you know anything about science, it's not
Hmm.
that's a bug, not a feature. Um,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so they've been trying to get this situation handled. And um, recently, so what was kind of weird was that Eric it was kept being kind of apologetic on the Joe Rogan experience because he was saying like I really basically like harassed my brother on my podcast to get him to talk about this, um,
Yeah.
because the his podcast was a very uncomfortable kind of thing because he was trying to get his brother to be able to talk about this without thinking that he's being abusive to or harassing whoever or wishes ill of the people that are
Sure.
um, you know uh, not letting this information get out. Um,
Hmm.
but Eric was trying to make the point that like this is it's bad for science, and it's bad that you are being pigeonholed just as the guy that got run out of Evergreen College, and that people don't know you as the person who maybe should have won a Nobel Prize for finding this out, uh,
Yeah.
and and forgetting the fact that like the actual problem with lab mice is something that could have resulted in bad toxicology, and could have actually people put people's lives at risk. Um, and so, what I'm interested to ask you about is, since you had brought up before this kind of metafiction idea of using, Kyrie to talk about violence, and you were talking about like you're basically saying like marketing is like violence, um, and but I think what I want to ask is whether that's because competition is just like it's like it is in the academic world, where basically like you have this kind of cutthroat stuff that happens, and these people are trying to vie for a certain amount of attention, um, in order to do good work, right? Um,
Mm.
but sometimes like there's that competition. There's a kind of like code of ethics that you might assume other people have, and then when you find out that they don't, you're like, wow, like I can't believe, you know, um, that like something like this happened where, um, you
Yeah.
know, uh, so are there um, is there kind of like a more abstract like theory you can talk about that you feel like Kyrie might be a metaphor for, or was it just that like because Melissa stumbled onto this with Song of the Wild. There's a lot of stuff that she wrote about in her
Oh,
novel
interesting.
that once she wrote it and reread it, she's like, "Oh, I'm saying this about the church. I'm saying this about um, like uh, like I was saying, I was comparing it to fascism, but like there's a kind of like secret police in her novel."
Mm.
And so, like to me, reading it, I'm just like, this is like the Nazi Party. They're not an official police group, but they're a group of rangers that serve a kind of like governor. Um,
Hmm.
and it's like, as an outsider, it's very obvious to me that these are the things that she's saying, but it's because I'm an outsider that I can kind of read into that.
Mm.
So would you say maybe you've had a similar experience where when you were working on it, there wasn't a specific like agenda that you had, but maybe looking back on it, there
Yeah,
was different influences?
I think. So one of the things that I thought would be interesting when I thought of the idea, I don't remember where it came from, but when I thought of the idea, I knew this was the sort of thing that I wanted to draw, and that's let's I'm gonna switch,
Mhm.
is when I had the idea of what if we told a story during the time when people did not we're not sure what to think about the people we call today Christians,
Mhm.
of which you and I are a part of that community. But for most people, they were known by different names, and
Mm.
they were usually defined by the majority who was not Christian, looking in to various extents and defining them for them, I guess, as a
Okay.
minority community. And I
Right.
thought that would be interesting. The subject of Kyrie is not this, but it's a theme among others. And I guess having been someone who's not been Christian, been someone who has been Christian, uh, argued both sides of uh, deism and theism, and
Mhm.
whether or not Christianity is moral or true.
Right.
I'm aware of what it looks like and what it feels like when uh, a group is defined by its antagonists, I suppose, which I think is kind of interesting, and it helps me when I'm looking at the third century in particular. I'm looking at a community that's being uh, thought of as uh, inherently seditious and probably has dual loyalties. Isn't particularly civic. Uh, Probably has it in for the president. Um, would probably commit acts of terror if given more free agency. Sort of
Right.
things that people have said in the past about other particular, Judaism and Islam, and I just think that's the sort of thing that I hate to say the word triggers. It triggers me to even think of that, and that's what excites me because it
Right.
sounds
Right.
like a very difficult subject to tackle, something that is relatable to today, with like it almost like a theological dark web, I suppose, of like what are we allowed to talk about, and there's a lot of topics we're not allowed to talk about in terms of the preternatural or supernatural today. Those same many of those same topics were off bounds in the third century as well. So I think it's kind of it's a fun thing to try and navigate that subtly. I do it. There, it's narratively driven. It's not preachy.
Right. Right.
I don't like break the fourth wall and have them kind of look at the audience and tell you what to think about a particular subject. I don't have any of the characters. My story doesn't tell you what to think. I hate those kind of stories, but you can watch me kind of navigate things that I'm frankly not sure of how to address on the ground level. Uh, and I think that's sort of what storytelling is for, among other places. It's meant to be explorative, and it's meant to, which I guess ties back into the Weinstein thing. Is if you already know the end of your story, you might as well not tell it. In a sense, you need to be progressing. You need to be pushing the ball down the field, and that goes with science. I mean, science is another way of storytelling when you think about it.
Right.
We need to be trying to tell the most accurate, the best story possible, which in science's case is the most accurate story possible. And it sounds like there's conflicts of interests because it's human beings having to tell those stories inevitably, and human beings always have selfish motives to usually protect their reputation above protecting the experiment, I suppose. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I think you banged the nail on the head because I think you went through what C.S. Lewis went through
Mm.
in that being someone who was who can you know became of faith later in life. Um, he was constantly being um, labeled by you know right wing ideologues and left wing ideologues,
Mm.
um, and even to this day, people have a tough time kind of being able to deal with the fact that he wasn't, I guess you could say, culturally Christian. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so there was something that got brought up in this, and it's something that made me think, oh, this is what me and Matt are. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
this is a very convenient way that I can explain what what type of creators that we think of ourselves as, because Herbert Spencer, as I mentioned in the little brief, came up with a book, First Principles, and it's actually a subversive titling, because there was a North African um, on like scroll or book on First Principles, and
Mm-hmm.
it's actually one of the original texts that was um, someone trying to come up with a systematic theology or exegesis of scripture, and it was written by a theologian Origen, um, and but Herbert's first principles is where we get the term survival of the fittest.
Hmm.
Um, his
Hmm.
philosophical standing is controversial because of what Eric Weinstein calls preference falsification, which is
Hmm.
performed by most Darwinists because they so he Herbert's claims surrounding the government would make his modern day beliefs more in line with libertarians. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
but academic writers are skittish to discuss his actual beliefs because it would risk being labeled racist, right? Because anything that is around social engineering and Darwinism has been put in the racist bucket. Um, now, Jonathan Pajot actually had a very similar thing that he went through because there were a bunch of people that were claiming that he was skittish to talk about Darwinism. And so he put out a video that said, you know, I'm not, I'm concerned with scientism, and
Hmm.
it doesn't help my argument to get lost in a kind of like reductive argument about Darwin specifically. Um, and I thought that that was a really interesting
Hmm.
conversation, and why it reminded me of you and me is that the I think that what Spencer was trying to say with first principles is that you can actually have a um, a optimistic view of biology, and that there's this it's kind of I kind of put it in the category of what Paul said about you can just look at the world and see God. Um, that's the case that he was trying to make. And so when I talk to people about what I believe, I'm assuming that they understand the world the same way that I understand the world, and I don't think of it as a uh, an opportunity to convert them necessarily. Um, I more or less think of myself as a creator who is trying to evoke the beauty that I see in the world, and there might be an opportunity to get more granular if, down the line. Um, but the the actual work of um, evangelism isn't what I feel technically called to.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and there's been this kind of false equivalency, like you kind of mentioned, that if you are a Christian and you're dealing with intellectual topics, then that must mean that you want to make an altar call eventually, and that there's like each interaction at whether it be like at a trade show or once you finish my book, there's a devotional that you have to buy in order to really get something out of this,
Hmm.
piece. I would prefer there to be this, like the type of intellectual landscape, like in C.S. Lewis's day, where you could just be talking to people about things of the mind, things of the heart, things about art, and there being kind of this understanding that we might not agree on the same. We might not have the same philosophy of life, but we share a lot of things because we're both human and we both understand things about the world that are pretty much the same. And if you see the beauty of what I believe, maybe I can get you to enjoy life more. But that's different than assuming that I'm going to make you any more smart than you currently are. You
Yeah.
know.
I think it's one of the difficulties I found. I did a dumb poll on Twitter, and I asked people if they thought human beings are essentially equal in value or essentially not, and they need some sort of societal construct to kind of, uh, naturally they're going to be given unequal values, and then we need constructs to kind of rebuild them back to some sort of equality.
Hmm.
Uh, kind of like a, what do you call it? Um, I forgot the term. I don't keep up with critical theory very much. Basically, that's the critical theory answer. And a third of people, I have no idea who answered, but
Mm,
a third of people answered with the latter. They thought that human beings at base don't have a fundamental value,
mm.
but uh, and I think that's kind of uh, um, okay. Why did I bring that up in light of what you were saying? Sorry. Sometimes you get very complex, and I'm trying to keep up.
Well, no, it could be that what you're meaning is that
Yeah, help me out.
there's a difference between value as like I would like to go out into the world and if there's a little girl about to be hit by a car, I would like to be willing to die for that little girl because she is also human. I don't
Yeah.
care if that little girl is a Christian
Oh,
before I save her life.
I got it. It's I think 100 years ago, uh, philosophy usually ran along the lines. There were a lot of assumptions and first principles that were taken as granted, I guess, within
Mm,
intelligentsia,
right.
and so you could discuss things that actually they usually drifted towards more of the libertarian because even libertarian ideals are built on a universalist understanding of values, I guess, at
Mm,
base.
mm,
That all humans deserve X, Y, and Z, and therefore we're going to, uh, have minimal enforceable power, I
mm,
guess, within society, so that people can enjoy those things that they all equally deserve and equally can benefit from.
mm,
We want to maximize that, and
mhm.
that's a very different first principle approach than saying uh, everything's a construct, and so
Oh, right, right.
there's a traditional Western construct, and we're going to deconstruct that to build another construct. But
Mm,
we hate the Western one because it's a construct, but we also believe everything's a construct, so we're just going to build others. And I do have liberal friends that are cynically even see that. I shouldn't say liberal. Um, I mean, sensible left leaning friends who see uh, the black humor, I guess, in that.
yeah, I know. I would agree with you that liberal is a
you know,
good. I think the um, I think progressive has become a term that I've more or less deprecated in my mind because of the assumption that like you're saying like that it has that constructionist assumption that we're building somehow on like an unstable skeleton um, in
yeah,
terms of like the work for others' well-being that we're doing. Um, and yeah, but I think
yeah. So
there's
it's, it's it's a challenge to try and build a consensus
mm,
when I
oh
still think
certainly
I think it's inherently uh, I think it's philosophically untenable to believe that we have nothing at base that's valuable. I don't think we live or act or reason that way. But
right.
when someone believes that, it's very difficult to build up from that position towards something
Mhm,
that's
mm,
that we can actually kind of uh,
right.
enjoy the liberties that liberalism is meant to encourage. So,
I have another point here, but I see that you have the Indiegogo up. Is there something you wanna?
oh no, I was just trying to keep something to distract people. Yeah. What do you got?
Okay, so I kind of have written here as like a tangential point,
Hmm.
but it is in line with more of like what the work that you do as an author um, to uh, to kind of categorize your stuff so that people can find it more easily.
Hmm.
Um, so I've said fiction is a strange industry because requires com- it requires competing among other similarly minded people. So you've discussed how Curie is a microcosm for the violence that occurs in the domestic sphere. Likewise, I was reticent to make Cain and a true slasher or horror novel because I wanted it to be obvious that I was really concerned about the internal sphere.
Hmm.
However, I was surprised to find out how. Well, I kind of found out two things. One, that horror storytelling is actually pretty rich in terms of meaning. Like you can
Oh
convey
yeah,
that this is like, that this person has been bullied their whole like. That's kind of what I talked about when I mentioned Carrie. There's a lot being
yeah.
communicated in Carrie that isn't actually advocating for the type of deconstruction like you're talking about, that like, we shouldn't put kids in school. Like that's not the point of Carrie. The point is that there's a lot of things that happen in the internal and domestic sphere that nobody talks about, and then like people have real actual breakdowns, right? So
Mm-hmm.
uh, I was surprised to find out that, and then I was surprised to find out that rather than assume Cain and Abel was um, a weak horror thriller, or no, rather okay, they didn't assume that it was a young adult fiction with a twist ending, but rather that it was a weak kind of like horror or domestic thriller. And so I think that one thing that we can talk about is, was there anything that you've seen or that you experienced with Kyrie where you felt like, oh, this is what this is, and then you were like either having editors look at it, or you were rethinking stuff in a later draft, and you were like, oh, this isn't like adult historical fiction, it's middle grade historical fiction. Did anything like that happen to you, or do you know of any kind of horror stories from other creators that might have had that same problem?
Oh gosh, like where I'm misidentifying the market.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think my main one the past couple of years, honestly, has been uh, basically finding the Indiegogo is the space. Like I didn't think comic skaters would be interested in an all ages adventure story,
Hmm.
but I think a lot. I think that's very standard fodder for just crowdfunding comics generally for people who are outside the big two sphere, who don't go into local comic shops, who don't read about superheroes, who don't collect comics, who don't, like that's just an entirely separate market and world until about 2 years ago. And they flooded over into they immigrated into the crowdfunding sphere, and I found that they like my book more than typical uh, crowdfunder type people do, which I think is really surprising and interesting and rewarding. Like I do much better on Indiegogo than Kickstarter when I run campaigns. I do them on both, and I get dramatically more uh, pre-orders from the Indiegogo side. So I think that's really interesting. It just goes to show me, like I'm having to further break down, uh, I guess I should say, stereotypes about people who grew up on Spider-Man and Superman. No offense, but like you guys have read a lot of stories. That's kind of one of the benefits of growing up on the big two is you've read many different types of stories within that genre. You really thought uh, probably more deeply than the average just general comic reader has on what makes stories good and bad, because you've had to experience good and bad runs, different creative issues that you didn't like. This writer came over and you didn't like what he did for 5 issues, then he left and you were fine. Like I think DC and Marvel type people, like they've really, before they were old enough to know what they wanted, they already understood what they wanted more deeply than I think a casual reader does usually. So so they're able to find what they like in other genres faster, I think, because they've kind of had they spend a lot of time chatting with their friends about what's good and bad about comics, much more so than people who just kind of casual, kind of grew up on web comics or something. I think that's usually how it goes, which is funny. So I'm flipping. I thought web comics people liked everything, turns out they don't. They usually just have one niche sort of thing that they kind of go with, whether it's bad or good quality. They're just kind of enjoying that particular fandom.
Mhm.
But Marvel and DC types, they do explore more. So
Mm.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
no,
That's
and
my
I
thought.
think it is a uh, as much as I present it as kind of like a a silly experience. It was kind of painful to figure out like that that this or that isn't like the right, you know, like it takes some time and it takes some humility, which is kind of why I bring it up for different people that are, that might be interested in this channel as more of like the DIY side of things,
Yeah.
because it's not obvious that what you're thinking your comic or book is right. You just kind of assume based on your experience that you've had with fiction, this is what I would categorize it as. And then when you get some other creatives to kind of, which is totally why I'm putting Kaiju Kids on Wattpad, because I want to see, if somebody, it's like if some mom DMs me because their kid read this and this like it's so gory or whatever,
Hmm.
then like that's good information because then I won't traumatize any more um, any more moms or any more kids
Yeah.
with something that's really meant for teens, or it's more of a YA thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I love it. You get to workshop it. Yeah.
yeah, that's certainly my hope.
Yeah. Well, cool. I don't know if we have time for our back end thing. Do we have anyone in the chat? Let's see. Got Fly Fox Pro. Hey, hey, buddy. Um, let's see. Let's okay. Hold on. I'm going to crap. I'm trying to fill dead air. I want to see if we've got anyone watching now. I'll throw in the link, and then we can see if Fly Fox or anyone else wants us to actually do this. But
I
just
do
kind of
I do have some
yeah.
other things that
Shoot.
happened.
Yeah, please.
So there was something that happened. Doug Wilson was kind of like losing his mind in one of his blogs, and
Oh,
I was
okay.
like, "What the heck happened?" So,
Oh no.
because I could tell that he was really good at making his writing punchy, but
Uh-huh.
then something happened with the uh, around the coronavirus that made him kind of like saying the next time, where like if it so happens that coronavirus rears its ugly head in the fall, to be really suspicious of the of any type of quarantine or whatever. So I'm like, okay, this is pretty strongly worded stuff. So I don't know what happened. It turns out that the
Hmm.
Christchurch app was suspended for breaching sensitive events terms.
Huh.
Um,
Okay.
so pretty much like the his interpretation of that was, there wasn't any bad faith um, arguments being made against the quarantine or acting or any unilateral kind of claims like, this is judgment for this or that,
Hmm.
sin and like so it was kind of a he was basically objecting that this was something that like but basically you can't Google was basically saying you can't put out Christian content during a quarantine event, and so eventually the Washington Examiner picked up the story and was drawing some attention to it, and so it forced
Oh wow.
Google to rescind their banning of the app. Um,
Oh wow.
so yeah, so that kind of took me by surprise, um, that there
Hmm.
was something of that because there are obvious things within the news where people are kind of arguing back and forth about during the coronavirus what is um, what is good faith and bad faith around you know keeping your doors open and everything. And so I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, that's certainly a argument that we should be having right now. But this type of thing where you just you're banning um, religious content during a quarantine, that seemed to me to be more of like it seemed to affirm the kind of technocratic alarmism that I've been seeing, where it's like, that seems like a really kind of bummer move.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what do you think? Trying to fill in some space. I was going to show you one last thing, and we can close out. Uh,
Yeah, sure. Like I have all these kind of like things that I
yeah, you got
don't
a lot of
really have
stuff.
any commentary about, but just that um, I saw that happened. Um,
what do you think about this?
oh,
Do you see this? It was the front page of Reddit.
oh boy,
I mean, I
that's
think this is how memes work now. I really I annoy my family with this stuff, but I enjoy the language of memes because uh, they've gotten they used to be ironic and now they have the appearance of irony, but
oh yeah, no,
beneath it
yeah,
there's a genuineness to it,
uh
an earnest expression of a very deeply held conviction, which I think is a really fun expression of a Zoomer culture where it used to be. I mean, our generation would pretend to do something in earnest, but really deep down it was cynical or ironic. But it's been
no, I
flipped
so
now.
I totally thought that political cartoons were going to die in like real act like nobody wants to really pay for the New Yorker or anything unless they're in very specific elite coastal towns and they want to be cool with their friends. So I thought
Yeah,
like, okay, political cartoons as a genre, they're just gonna die. Nobody's gonna care about them anymore. And then I saw that, like you're saying, people were making like memes that do that same work, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's awesome. We're okay.
yeah, yeah.
uh,
Well, I just thought it was a good point because uh it's it's flipping a Democrat talking point that's overly simplistic and demonstrating its simplicity, but by doing so, it's showing the genuineness of a real concern that people do have about their
right,
what they can and can't do with their body, what the governments can tell them what to do with their body,
right,
even if it's at the expense, and that's the key part, even if it's at the expense of other people's health.
right.
Uh, I
Yeah.
still get a choice, which I think that's a I don't know, that's a very clever.
No, I think it's perfect. I'm
Yeah,
all about it.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, so the other thing. Oh, what were you?
Yes. No, you had something else.
Oh yeah, so um, apparently Phil Vischer's son has a YouTube channel called Way Nation, and I had been getting their stuff as like um, basically that like they have this kind of very consumable um, like stuff like you know people will be guessing which 90s song from which 90s gospel song or 90s Christian rock song um the performer is doing, and so like it was something that I would consume once in a great while.
Mm-hmm.
um and I would be like YouTube kept trying to suggest it to me because I was listening to like Wretched or Desiring God and stuff like that. um
Okay. Yeah.
but but then they recently started a series uh that like they didn't even want to start, I guess, but it was this kind of idea that their recent episode where they were going to interview these Christian rappers. Social Club Misfits is their collective name. It's a duo. um they started a series called Can I Ask You Something, that's like really genuine, good, like um interview content.
Mm-hmm.
And the first topic was basically like um what's your like leaving church and then coming back story. And so one of the duo, Marty Marr, was like really disillusioned after his pastor refused church discipline because of a whole bunch of scandals. So he told his story of like finding another church, and then um, how that, yeah, like their love kind of convinced him to like really return to the faith. um, and then the other
Well.
guy, Fern, had a 10-year hiatus of belief,
Mm.
and he got arrested on his parents' anniversary and
Hmm.
called them in Naples to get him out of jail, and um,
Wow.
like kind of like begged his pastor father to come, and and then his mom was like advocating for him, and like they didn't even get back there within uh you know immediately. It like took he felt like you could hear his emotional thing of like, I know I screwed up my dad's plans to like have a nice vacation, but like that 3 days was excruciating. um so it was a really interesting thing to see this channel that had like a lot of kind of like Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel type content, but with
Sure.
that kind of evangelical angle. It was cool to see them doing one where it's like, okay, let's actually do some like really good interview material and like topics that might actually be controversial for people to hear. And since that was really recent, I thought that would be cool to share so people can
Yeah.
like if they're not interested in some of that other type of content, they might be interested in hearing that and seeing how that interview show develops.
No. Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. Hmm. Well, I guess we'll skip the last part. We'll skip the poll. Maybe we'll do it another time.
But yes, be aware that we're going to try to make this a little bit more copacetic for people to watch. Now feel like they're in a lecture series or watching a poorly edited video essay. We're going to try to make it a little bit more interactive and um, you know have people from the chat kind of be able to um, give their 2 cents on stuff. Um,
Yeah, I think the the podcast framework works really well, but in a there's something that I think generally YouTube communities enjoy, the distinctive features that YouTube can give us that podcasts can't. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So, and part of
Right,
that
right.
is a bit of interactivity and stuff like that. So,
Right. Yeah. So we'll try to come up with some stuff like that. The last
yeah.
thing I wanted to let you know, and that other people might find cool,
Hmm.
um, is that Alistair Roberts during the quarantine is just reading "The Wind in the Willows,"
Oh wow.
and I thought that that was a cool like pivot. Like he was just like, this is my content, and like he's certainly not breaking any of that formula during the quarantine, but like he's just uploading him reading chapters, and I thought it was such a great like, y'all need some help, some hope in this time, and this is a real, like I could tell that it seems like it's one book that he like really treasures, and that probably when he was growing up and like afraid of a thunderstorm, that like he would probably go to that book. Um, and it's been nice like as I'm playing Rocket League to just hear him talk about Toad and his adventures and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen a lot of celebrities do uh, pretty like Patrick Stewart has been doing sonnets by
Oh, really?
memory. I've seen a little bit of that.
Awesome.
I've seen the British Office boss. Forgot his name with the goatee. He's been doing something every day where it's just like a ask me anything. He's just hanging
Oh,
out,
okay.
being funny. Um, yeah, I think it's really weird. It's like being kind of active in the space of just kind of putting out free or low quality uh,
Mhm.
kind of community topic discussion type things for a while. It's funny to see celebs come down into this out of desperation. They're creating content like us, and it's just kind of interesting to see. Like a lot of comics pros have had. There was a pencils down movement a couple weeks ago where a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
people.
yeah. I saw some of that.
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate. I guess that there's not enough funds to pay for them to continue to work, so they were asked to stop drawing the page they were working on, or if they were typing a page, to stop typing that page and just kind of halt. Uh, I'm assuming that's going to be lifted soon, but for the time being, these people are trying to fill time, and a lot of them are going and making YouTube channels, which I think is really interesting. So
Yeah.
whether it's making topical pre-recorded videos or doing live streams, or draw streams or ask me anything type things. They're all kind of entering a space that it's safe. The water's fine. It's healthy. Uh, it's a very
Right.
vibrant place to get to know your readers. You have to be comfortable with the chaos, but there's nothing wrong with a little chaos.
Uh-huh.
And it's just kind of exciting to see them out of necessity uh, learn to swim these
Right.
waters.
Right.
I guess so. I'm proud of them.
Yeah.
It's not a Schadenfreude thing. It's exciting. I'm sure like when things build back up again, they're already going to be more acclimated, more comfortable with this sort of medium, what we're doing, and it's probably going to be better for everyone that they get comfortable with it. So
Okay. So I don't want to do this on stream if you're not ready, but I am looking forward to Corona Kings. I don't know if
oh
you
yeah,
have anything on your desktop that you can show, or if you just want to tell us about it. But um,
yeah, I can do a preview.
oh,
So as I bring it up, uh, talk about it. Yeah. So it's like a zine sort of thing that we're giving away
okay.
to lift people's spirits. A lot of fun, weird, uh, strange art. A lot of people.
So like
Uh,
a true '90s zine. Like
yes.
okay, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most people are. I think a lot of the stuff I've seen behind the scenes is black and white. Uh, like literally, like it looks like Xerox pencil art.
Awesome.
But a lot of
Make me
it,
feel like I'm at a punk show that I've never been to.
yes. And a lot of people are doing stuff that is more technically advanced too, which is exciting. And we don't have any particular focus. Okay, time to share screen. But a lot of us are playing with the idea of the times that we're in, the issues that we find ourselves in right now. And I'm doing like um, I wanted to draw like a winter art scene. Is it
Oh, cool.
showing? It's showing. Yeah, yeah. So I'm just thinking in the future about future stories that I might want to tell with the same characters or with some of the same characters.
Oh,
Here's kind of a preview of a much larger piece of infected Vikings with viruses on their shields and surrounding Myra, and she's got to take them out. Uh, so that's just
that's
kind of like,
that's that's amazing.
yeah, just
I love it.
you get it. But that's a little quick preview for people who check this out. And we're launching. If it's not the 30th, it's in the high. I mean, it's going to be like the next week or so. Everyone's wrapping up their final pages, and
Okay.
it's just like a jam session. I do enjoy these sort of things. Like I don't like working for cheap, but I will work for free. You know what I mean?
I like that. Yeah.
Like yeah, I either need to be paid what I'm worth, or I need to just kind of have fun and just kind of sit
Right.
on the street corner and jam with some people, and that's what this is.
No,
So
no, I haven't seen any links, but are you doing Corona Kings live streams where you're all doing different stuff, or is it just
you
a
know,
zine that you're putting out?
we need to be discussing that honestly. There's been a little talk about like maybe we promote the thing by talking about it on a stream,
Mm.
but it kind of would be fun. So are you thinking like maybe we just people get together, Corona Kings contributors, and just have a Corona themed hangout session
Right, and
kind
like
of thing?
maybe show the art as because I
Oh yeah,
yeah because I think that's it's
good idea.
really interesting like different how different people interpret whether showing yourself drawing is valuable to and what audience it is valuable to because like you get the people that do like speed art videos and so that's kind of like anybody would love to see that because it's like you're showing this process that took someone maybe like you know a week to do and then you're seeing like incrementally change um you get people that do drawing live streams where the kind of, there's a theme, so you can build up hype, and everybody can see, oh, you're all drawing like this thing. So the draw is more like, how are they going to draw Baby Yoda or something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but like, I, as somebody who went through the process of trying to teach myself how to do basic cartooning, which I haven't done in many moons. Um, just seeing somebody's process, it is very interesting. Um, at least
It's a
to
great idea.
yeah. I've seen Mike do it sometimes, and they do more of like the kind of topical. Let's all draw Baby Yoda, and then
Mm-hmm.
they kind of like heckle each other as they're drawing.
Yeah,
Um,
those are fun streams. I wish I could keep up with their talent because those people, I mean, some of them are clearly, you know, like they've worked for Marvel and DC. So it's like just sitting down for an hour and drawing something is, you're going to see some of the best comic work art out there. Uh, yeah. Yeah, but we should have done that. And I guess this was probably too ragtag. It's too punk rock to record it. The revolution will not be televised, I guess. So
uh,
we probably just need to do a stream just to like go through it and talk about it, which I think
yeah.
would be fun now that it's basically done.
Uh,
Which it's a little unfortunate,
yeah.
but
As
yeah.
speaking as a not as a editor, but as a fan, I would certainly like. I would be one of the viewers of Corona King's, um, kind of like behind the scenes stream. That would be pretty dope.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, I'll let the guys know because I think that's otherwise it's just a thing. Like sharing this on social media and not having a social component to it, where we're
Mhm.
just hanging out and talking through it, is probably a big missed opportunity because people need it to be contextualized with that human element. You can't just unless we're just going to print it out and throw it out on Hate Street. It's just a PDF that no one's going to look at. So yeah, we should probably share it around. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks. I'm gonna pass that around. This has been a good hangouts. I
Yeah, yeah.
think we
I,
covered a
I
lot.
think um we're doing the good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that the more I speak again, or I suppose the
Hmm.
more feedback we get, the better. If there's
Yes.
anybody that like kind of thinks that we're on a good path, but there might be like an estuary that we don't know about, and that would like help us through more choppy waters, then that would be cool to get some feedback. Um, but yeah, no, I've been enjoying all the um, kind of peaks and valleys that we've gone through so far. Um, and yeah, thanks for watching, Flyfox Pro. You've been a trooper. Um,
Yeah. He's a cool dude.
yeah, I've seen him. And oh, I'm gonna forget his name, and it's gonna torture me. I've seen Ezra pop up.
Ezra. Yep.
Yeah, I've seen Ezra pop up before. He seems like a pretty cool dude. Um, but yeah, yeah. Thanks for hosting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So this is another episode. I guess this is number 11. I think it was. I feel like we've done more than
Yeah,
that.
I think I think it's been 11.
Nice. So yeah, give us a sub, give us a like, and look for this next Monday. Doing this again, 7 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, this is John. You want to say goodbye to everybody?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Hey, so yeah. Oh, I just wanted real quick to shout out again. I'm John Matos writer on most things, and that includes Wattpad. If you want to check out
Hmm.
my stories, and yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, great. See y'all later.